tremendous teachers over the years, starting with therapists in my early 20s, and, you know, getting into Buddhism in my 30s, and, you know, Tibetan Buddhism, Zen, and Krishnamurti. Those are kind of my interests. Yes. And I've heard the Dalai Lama speak several, 2 or 3 times. So that, but it's hard for me to say or commit to just one guru. And
but why do you need just to commit to one guru? Who says you have to do that?
Well, that's what I keep on hearing.
You can have 100 gurus. Lama Zopa's got about 100. Atisha had 150. What? What, sweetheart?
Well, I've heard that I should, or maybe I'm just picking up something where I feel like I should commit to one, but I feel like, even though it can get a little confusing sometimes, having so many different, one thing I can say is I feel like I now block out other things that just, you know, like say a therapist or the old stuff I'm into, I can block that out now. I feel like I'm pretty clear about what I'm into.
Okay, so what you're really talking about, Doug, is you're describing your own internal process. You're moving along. First you had this person, then you learn from that person, then you learn from this person. So maybe could I suggest what you're doing is you're getting clearer about your path. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay then. Well, it's a very organic, natural process. So I think you're doing everything perfectly. And you can't. It's sort of like I don't know whether you like girls or boys or who knows what. We're very creative these days. Let's say you like girls, so you might have 17 girlfriends, but you know eventually maybe it'll narrow it down, and one day you might settle down with one of them. You might not, or you might. So it's a process you've got to go through. It's a process, and you seem to be doing it very nicely. So maybe you just keep moving and not have too many conceptual ideas about what you think you should do. Because, you know, as you go, as you progress. I mean, I think I use a simple example like yoga, which is so obvious. There are 37 varieties of yoga. In the beginning, you just, there's a yoga center. I'll start yoga. And before you know it, you've got 6 different yoga teachers. And one day you start to like one yoga more than another. So it'll just narrow your options until eventually it is evident to you that this is your yoga. So it's evident, therefore, who your teachers will be. So as you keep moving, honey, as you become clear internally, you are already identifying your own path and your own process. And eventually, you're going to meet the teachers in that one, and they will become they'll be the one. It's a natural process. So just keep doing it. Don't doubt. Just keep moving and get clearer in your own mind. As you progress more, as you practice more, you're going more deeply into it, but it really means you're more going deeply into yourself and finding what works for you. And that means you'll find the path and the teachers that are yours. Which doesn't mean you still don't like Jesus or you still don't like Krishnamurti. They can have them there, no problem, no contradiction. But that you get your main ones, because that's like once you've really chosen your yoga, you've got to do that way that teacher says, because I mean your foot this way 1 inch and the foot this way another inch. You've got to get exact. So you're going right. You just keep moving, Doug. I think there's no problem. Seems to me you're doing great.
Great, thank you.
What do you think? Are we communicating?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the thing is, I think this is the point. Maybe in your heart, it's like a prayer, and prayer really is just like an aspiration. You just think every day, may I become clear? May I find my teachers? May I find my path? I'm moving along my path, and you're going in the right direction. So may I recognize when I get there? You know, may I become clear? And that'll that intention is quite strong. Not just looking from the sidelines, hoping they'll come along, but you're involved in it. May I become clear? May I recognize my path and therefore my teachers? You understand what I'm saying, Doug?
Yeah, and one thing that just came up is green Tara is something that's pretty powerful for me.
Okay.
Anyway, I'd love to get initiation in that. I don't know what that takes.
Where do you live? Where do you live, Doug?
In the Bay Area.
Okay. So what center do you go to? Or these days with Zoom, I know.
The Ocean of Compassion.
Oh, you do? Okay, wonderful. Well, then, just keep having that aspiration, keep going, and then one day, Kim will be able to invite Geshe Dagpa, for example. I mean, when people start going back into the centers and to actually give that empowerment, to give that initiation. So just make that aspiration every day. And that is one of the causes for you to meet that and to get it when you're ready. So just have confidence, make those aspirations, but also tell the director of the center that you'd like to do that. And one day when the lamas come again, or even these days, I mean, they're giving it online. His Holiness gives initiations online now on Zoom, you know. So that might even happen that way. But have the wish for it. The intention to want it is a good stepping stone to it. You understand?
Thank you.
Good, Doug. Thank you, darling.
Thank you.
What else, people? This is an important topic. You can see that. Everybody has such good points. What else? That's enough, maybe? Okay. All right. Okay, so then, you know, in the text, of course, it's extensively put, not like the way I've talked about it at all. I've just talked about it very colloquially. But I find it helps it to get down to earth, you know. So in the Lamrim, it's all dealt with in very great detail. And as I mean, Tsongkhapa says, you know, it is the foundation. It's the foundation of your success. And actually, it does make sense. If you choose the right tennis coach, I mean, look at all those tennis players. I mean, the major decision they make is to find the right coach, you know. And that is the key to success, because that's a person whom you can rely upon, whom you can see, who sees your qualities, and who can guide you exactly to know how. And okay, there's more to it than that. There's far more to it than that. But it's not mystical, you know. Don't try to think it as mystical. And of course, as we progress, I mean, Doug mentioned he likes Green Tara. This is where very much in the Vajrayana, all the teachings about guru devotion, as they call it, in the Tibetan path are grounded in the Vajrayana approach, which of course is the most sophisticated. That's like the postgraduate, as I said, you know. And the key to the practice here is actually there's psychologically, they say that the clearer our mind is, those teachers we've got are the Buddha for us. That's one of the most powerful methods, really, as I said about devotion, that opens your mind so you are easily receptive to hear the teachings. And the way to understand this, I think, is when we realize, and we're going to go into this when we get to high school, that when we go into all the delusions, then what holds us back from everything is the presence of ego grasping, is the presence of our attachment, our delusions, our anger, our jealousy, and we see the whole world through those lenses. So when we can remove those from the mind, that's when you've got pure devotion. Pure, meaning not polluted by attachment, not polluted by delusions. So then your mind is very clear. And then naturally when your mind is less deluded, you're more easily able to hear the teachings from the teacher and more quickly get the realization. Now this is logic. I mean, this is logic. I know when I studied Kung Fu, I was a Buddhist at the time. I was a nun, you know. They didn't know. I was like 45 and studying Kung Fu with all these boys, right, in London. I didn't wear robes at the time. They didn't know I was a Buddhist nun. But it was really clear to me, the ones in the Kung Fu class who were the best at Kung Fu were the ones who weren't attached, who weren't angry, who weren't arrogant. The arrogant boys just stumbled over themselves and they couldn't do any Kung Fu because all they did, they were living in their own head. But the best practitioners, I remember one girl, Paulette, she was this cute girl, you know. But she was the best at Kung Fu because she had the least drama, the least ego. That means she was quickly able to learn, and we're just talking to learn anything. It was just only boring old Kung Fu. But she was the best by far because her delusions weren't in the way. That really showed me. That's what, when you've got devotion in a teacher, your mind is very pure. It's not attached. It's not angry. You're not resentful. And you want what they want. You want what they've got. So that very openness that you have, which is what I mean by devotion, where the delusions aren't so rampant, it's obvious that guru devotion is the foundation of all good qualities because your mind quickly gets the teachings. What prevents us from hearing the teachings, Kung Fu or Buddhism, is arrogance, is pride, is attachment. So it's sort of logical that when you've got a devoted heart and you've chosen properly the person to give your heart to, you'll quickly become enlightened. You'll quickly learn Kung Fu. It's logic. Not mystical religious ideas, you know, but it's hard to hear it. I've got to think it through like that. It's logical. So choose your guru very carefully, as Pabonka Rinpoche says, because you're going to end up like them, okay? The onus is on us. And that's where we are all foolish and we leap in with all this, oh, I'm so devoted, I'm so attached. And then you start finding they're going to abuse you and then you want to sue them. It's because we'll grow up, please. We're big girls and boys now. Choose your guru very carefully. Do your research. Check up. Then open your heart and you'll quickly get realizations. And it's up to us. We're the boss. We are the boss in this. We are the boss. I really mean that so sincerely. Try and hear my point. We do the choosing. We give that Lama permission to show us our mind. Then we grow up. We're not babies. I mean, you hear these awful stories. You hear terrible stories about what gurus have done, to their students and things, especially the girl-boy business, right? But we've got to grow up. We're big girls and boys now. Don't just leap in with emotion. Oh, he must be a high Lama. Look at all those devoted students. It's because we all got attachment. We all want to be loved and we all want to be appraised. We all want to be having good reputation. We jump in the deep end. We're foolish. Use our intelligence. Be a grown-up. Be rational. Be appropriate. Have confidence. Then realizations will come. That's my thought. I forget. Okay, so that's the guru devotion. So then go into all that, think about that, and then that's the first one. Then you get to the perfect human rebirth business. And then you enter into junior school, entry level, grade 1, and now a teacher wants to increase our wish not to waste his precious life, as we talked last week, and he gets us to think about death and impermanence. So basically, like I said, there's 3 points there, and each of those 3 has 3 points. I don't know all the bullet points, but that's the general 3 are important. And these are all things we think about. You do it in your daily life, but you do it formally also in meditation. You think it through. So the very first thing Buddha Tsongkhapa, based on Atisha, based on the Buddha, gets us to think about in these 3 bullet points. The first one is, guess what, folks? You will die. It is definite. So how do you think about that? How do you make that practice? You don't just go sitting down in your meditation going, death is definite, death is definite, death is definite, hoping for something to happen. That's idiocy. You observe reality. All Atisha's doing, all Tsongkhapa's doing is using what he sees out there in the world. Guess what, folks? So it gives a bit of guidelines of what to think about. Well, you look at the world. You look at the ants. You look at the dogs. You look at the humans. Everybody who got born will definitely die. You just keep looking at this and it becomes more real for you, There's various points there. The second one is more scary, should scare the life out of us, getting closer to reality. The death is definite, but the time of death is absolutely not definite. And this really gets us to see how we have in our bones this deep delusion, as Lama Zopa puts it. We have this strong grasping at permanent me. So we know intellectually we will die. Nobody is foolish enough to say they won't die. But emotionally, experientially, because of this delusion in the mind, because we grasp so strongly at a feeling of permanence, we just don't believe we are going to die. We know we will, but it's way into the future somewhere that we don't know when it is, but we know somewhere one day it will come. But the terrible, bizarre irony is, because we're grasping so strongly at being permanent, meaning not just that we won't die, but I'm not even changing. The things, you wake up in the morning, you feel like the same lump of me 24 hours ago when you woke up, although you look in the mirror, you're a little bit older, but you can't really see it. We feel like we're sitting in stone, and we wake up every day and, we know that death is coming. We know that death is coming, but there's no sense of it whatsoever because we can't bear the thought of death. This is so evident, isn't it? So, it's like if you're going on a journey, even just a mile, from the time you leave in the car, you've got this very dynamic feeling of moving away from home and towards the supermarket. Like I'll go out sometimes, Matt will come and get me and we'll go shopping. So I've got this vivid feeling of moving away from my home and you're moving towards the supermarket. There's a very feeling of impermanence, isn't there? It's dynamic. Now that's what we're doing towards death, but we never feel it like that. We feel I'm the same person that woke up yesterday, the same person that woke up 42 years ago as today. It's just not true. Every day is one day closer to death. This is an actual scientific fact. But we can't bear to think it. It seems so depressing, But it's powerful. And we're coming to the action point soon. This is getting our mind ready to the action point, which is the third point. But this is the kind of thinking, so it sort of loosens the grip of this concreteness of this permanent me. And the more you look in the outside world, that reinforces it, because you realize that all these people, like even that dog walking down the street and suddenly it's dead. A car ran over it. It believes itself, like we do, it's permanent. We believe this, you know, and then when people do die, even other friends, people, we get so shocked. Oh, but I only saw her yesterday. How could she be dead, we'll say. Because every time we see each other in the framework of being permanent, solid. Forget about even seeing us inherent, just permanent, unchanging, you know. So by looking at the outside world, that's where you start to realize. But the real wake-up call comes when you say, that will happen to me. That's when it becomes real experience. If we just think it's outside world die, we feel safe because it's not me. Even when our beloveds die, it gets closer to home, but it still doesn't hit us because we think it's still, there's this hubris of this arrogance we have of being permanent. Well, that's only my auntie who's dead. I'm not dead. As Lama Zopa says, we have this bizarre way of dividing the world. There are some people who are living people, and I'm one of them. I'm a living person. And then there are the dying people. Listen to this. Think of this. It is beyond insane. But that's how we believe it. But as Lama Zopa says, living people die before dying people every day. But we have this vivid projection, a sick person, a person who's got cancer. We can't even talk to them properly. They don't have a life, do they? They're going to die. We don't even want to speak to them. We don't even want to look at them because it's a dying person. It's completely bizarre. It shows how we make up nonsense. And it indicates how deeply we grasp at these labels, you know. And we think I'm this arrogance. I'm a living person. Oh, phew, it's not me over there. Thank God it's not me. I'm a living person. It's just bizarre. It just shows. I mean, living people do die every day before dying people. Our projections are just nonsense. So we've got to loosen the grip of that view. Loosen the grip and realize I'm an impermanent person. I'm heading towards death. And as Lama Zopa says, as shocking as it sounds, the best way to think is, I will die today. Why? And so the point is, we've got to analyze why is it best. What is the third point? The third point is, death is definite. The time of death is uncertain, the second one. But the third point is that we've got to think about, again, it's just logical, taking the Buddha's view, of course, that at the time of death, at the time when the mind leaves the body, and of course Buddha's view is it'll take another body, of course. At that moment, what is important? What's the point? What's the point? What's the point at that moment? Well, there's a series of givens here, you know. Given that my consciousness came from before into this body, and given that when I die, it will continue and go somewhere else, and given that my mind is driven by the law of karma, which is that every millisecond of what I think and do and say will leave seeds in my mind that will ripen as my future, and more precisely, that given every millisecond of what I think and do and say that's negative, and we're going to go into that when we get to karma, will ripen as my suffering in the future. And given that I don't want suffering and do want happiness, then it follows logically, that at the time of death, the only thing that is of any value to me, that in other words, as we would say, that I can take with me, isn't the husband, the reputation, the money, the job, you know, the ideas, the brilliance, the success, the piano, the people, the boys, whatever it might be that we spend all our time thinking about, as if that were the most important thing. We know that will not continue. So what continues is only what is in my mind. So therefore, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a skillful way to think. We're going to talk about karma, but the thing is, you don't have to give up, throw out your husband, throw out all your investments. You don't have to throw out all your brilliant ideas and everything else, but you learn to change your mind. So the only thing that's of any benefit at that moment is your effort to practice. You're having given up attachment, having given up anger, having given up neuroses, having given up harming others. They're the imprints that we want in our mind at that time. So if we are doing things right now, when whether you're in the mountains or whether you've got 7 children, whether you've got $100 million, you learn to see it as impermanent, doesn't define you. You try to, all this will come as we practice, but there's this powerful attitude that we realize that all the things we do normally pay attention to as being the most important aren't, because they're no use to you then. The only thing that is permanent in the real sense is the virtue in your mind. You don't want the non-virtue in your mind. You don't want that. And you can't bring everything else with you. So it's a powerful realization. And what all this does at this moment, we're not quite getting to the next step of practice yet. Then Atisha gets us to the next point, which we'll go into, we can talk about it briefly. Atisha gets us to start to think about the options of the types of rebirth. And this is, of course, a pretty shocking one for us, and we just can't get our heads around that. We'll go into that later. So the impermanence one is really powerful. All the Lamas say, if we can even begin to get some semblance of the recognition of the reality of impermanence, our life is transformed. Because, there's a lovely example, one of the simple examples we all know. Okay, now first of all, when we hear we've got to give up, grasping at the husband and grasping at the job and grasping at this because you could die today, then what we do is we throw the baby out for the bathwater and we become completely nihilistic and we go, well, why bother? Why bother? If I could die today, why bother? That's nihilism. That's not the issue at all. Whatever you're doing today, whether it's working on your multi-million-dollar company or raising your 7 children or sitting in the mountains meditating, you've got to learn to know, and that comes eventually, how to navigate this mind of yours, how to see all that, and how to make sure that everything you think and do and say every second is a virtuous karmic seed that you're planting in your mind, and you're not planting negative ones. That's the bottom line. We'll get to that when we get to karma. We're still trying to prime our mind here to even get us to want to begin to practice. We're not really beginning to practice yet. We're just priming our minds, getting some perspective. But nevertheless, we're also thinking about impermanence, which is so profound. So having a feeling of things changing, of impermanence, makes you much more flexible, much less freaked out, because we grasp that everything is permanent. And when the lovely things are there, we really imagine they're going to last forever. I always quote that example, of Nicole Kidman when she was with Tom Cruise, and I read in an article that she said at the end of the article, "We will be together until we're 80, she said. Now, I'm not criticizing her. That's exactly how we feel. Because when you're in love with somebody and it feels everything is divine, everything is perfect, the house is beautiful, the kids are beautiful, the relationship's beautiful, this is what's interesting. This is how grasping at permanence is so linked to attachment. When attachment getting what it wants, which is when everything's beautiful, of course you can't bear the thought that it will change. So we put this lie upon it that it will be forever. It's a lie. It's not logic, but we believe it because it feels good, so we assume it'll be good for eternity. And then what happened? He did leave her. Whatever happened doesn't matter. The bubble burst. The attachment was shattered, and she went into despair. So now that, I'm not talking about her, she might not have, but but think about it. When the good thing ends, then you're crashing down, and now you've got the bad thing. But now we think that is permanent. We can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's why we kill ourselves. But everything changes, and it can be and this is why at the moment the suffering so many people are having, because you just think because it's at the moment how it is, it just feels like it'll last forever, and we can't bear the pain. But we have to realize, and that when we realize that we start to shift, loosen the grip of this grasping at things as being permanent, then we realize things could change, will change naturally. It might change for the better, it might change for the worse, but it's a more subtle thing. It just will change. It's more dynamic. Then you become more brave, you become more flexible. You run with it, you work with it, you don't freak out. You don't grasp onto it and hope it will never change. That is meaningless. I remember one of these talks ages ago, one woman was saying that she thinks all day in fear about her husband might die. And she said, how can I try and live in the moment? I said, forget about living in the moment. Just recognize that he will die. Don't say he won't die. We say, oh, no, he won't die. Rubbish, he will die. So I said, get used to the fact that he will die. Don't worry about it. He will die, but you don't know when. So make the most of today. Be happy you've got him. and make the most of it. He will die. And if you live your life beautifully like that, then if he does die tomorrow, you've done your best. And if he doesn't die, you've got a bonus. You've still got your husband. But to worry about that he might die, when in fact it's just ridiculous, but that's how we live our lives. Scared, holding on, you know. You can't hold on to anything. It's not possible. So you go with the flow, as we say. And the thing is, it doesn't mean you just give up. If Tom could leave me tomorrow, then why bother, we'd say. No, you make the most of every moment you've got, because what is left is what's in your mind. That's what you'll carry on. Tom will die. He will leave, but you'll be virtuous. You'll bring your virtue with you from it, not your non-virtue, because the mind continues. That's the crucial point for the Buddhist view. Your mind continues. And the interesting thing is, when you do realize that it is impermanent and he could die, you make the most of it. I mean, when you go away for a weekend, for a holiday, for a vacation, you don't say, oh, why just go for 2 days? It's only got 2 days. It won't last forever. Nobody says that. But then because it's only going to last for 2 days, you make the most of it. You know, you imagine if you go for 2 days for a holiday to the fancy hotel, and then you wake up in the morning with a headache. Oh, I'll just sit around today. I can't be bothered. I'll go to the beach next week. You've forgotten that it's impermanent. I mean, but when you realize it's impermanent, you've only got 2 days, you will enjoy it even more. That's the point when you understand impermanence properly. It's very powerful. So thinking first that death is definite, looking at the world and noticing it, and then when it gets a bit closer and it's your beloveds, that's even more powerful. But you never get the wake-up call until you say, the action point is, that will happen to me. That'll be me. I will die. My death is not definite. My death is all those things. It's suddenly, then you get the wake-up call. So when you're at the funeral of your beloved husband, yes, you've got grief, but you realize that'll be me. Then you get the wake-up call. Then you don't waste your life. Then you're more flexible. Then you let go more easily. You don't blame so much. You don't hold on to your anger. You realize how foolish it is, you know. You don't blame. You don't hold on to your attachment. It just loosens your mind up. It's very powerful, seeing everything's impermanent, you know. So then our teacher gets us the next step. He's continuing to prime our mind to getting us, his agenda is to get us to want to practice, which is the culmination of junior school, where we abide by the laws of karma, where we start to go into ethics, and we'll start that in depth next week. So the next step, which is such a bizarre one for us, of course, and this is taking Buddha's entire view of the universe. He then says, yes, given your life is precious, you don't want to waste it, then you start to think it's impermanent, and you increase your wish not to waste it, because you could die at any moment. Then you get to the next point. Well, what are the options of the types of rebirth that I could take? And this is where we do not like it at all in the West. This is Buddha's view about all the different realms of existence, you know. So the Buddha would say that there's his view of reality, Buddha's view of the universe. This is the Indians before him also. And again, this is coming not from revelation, but from their observation, that there are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of sentient beings, you know. Trillions. Humans are a tiny percentage. And they're all in this, there's different levels of them. There's the biggest one, you've either got Buddhas or you've got sentient beings. That's it. So all the ones are sentient beings. You've got three different levels of beings. The three realms of existence. And this is coming very much from the Hindu understanding, but based on people who have gone to the depth of subtle concentration. There's a certain realm of existence of people who are they call them formless. Their mind is so subtle, they don't even have any kind of grosser aggregates, and they're just living in the depth of subtle concentration. For them, it's the peak, and it's like, that's liberation, not for the Buddha. Then you've got the slightly grosser ones, and then you've got the desire realm. That's the main one here. The desire realm, and that's attachment is another word for desire. And that's the one we're in, and it's like 6 suburbs in this desire realm, 6 suburbs basically. They're all the way from the most blissful to the most intense suffering. It's on a spectrum from happiness to most intense suffering. So they call them the upper realms and the lower realms. Excuse me, sniffing. So they're all the result of actions. We're going to get into karma later, I'm describing this. But basically, every sentient being is experiencing the results of our own past actions. We are our own creators. So the form, forget the form and formless, the desire realm, the top suburb in the desire realm is called the God realm, which is really equivalent to heaven for the Christians and paradise for the Muslims. So that I like to put it this way, that it seems to me over the centuries, all us clever humans with our clever intellectual minds and our wish to be better people have come up with many similar experiences, I think. So many different cultures present some idea like this, you know. So it seems to me this is coming from the experience of people. It's coming from their experience. People have seen this type of thing or remembered it, you know. So that's the God realms for the Buddha, and that's the fruit of lots of virtue. Just lots of goodness results with that type of rebirth where the mind is very subtle, you're experiencing incredible joy, incredible bliss. All the different physical body you have is very subtle, like light, and the experience is incredibly joyful, incredibly blissful. It's the fruit of past virtue. And it lasts a long time. And you have these karmic appearances of blissful, radiant experiences. It's a real living thing. It's real. It's a type of rebirth. You've got another kind of God realm. Doesn't matter. The couple of these, you know. And then you've got the humans. So clearly we do not have bodies of light. This is evident. Look at us, bags of bones, you know, in this particular time of human rebirth. So it's the fruit of virtue. And so for the Buddha's perspective, the human one, even though it's the least happy, it's the best because we get access to our intelligence, access to ability to change our minds, and that's the key thing we need. That's our saving grace, you know, our virtue and our intelligence. So then you've got the next level, the lower realms. You've got the animal birth, and there's billions of those. I mean, not just the ones we see on the top of the surface of the earth. Apparently the vast majority of all animals. And this is a predominance of the root delusion, ignorance. And the vast majority of the animal realm are in the depths of the ocean, deep, deep down, like piled high in the depth of darkness. There's, you know, and I remember so interesting, 25 years ago, I remember the New York Times, I remember an article, I mean, I've read more things since that, but I remember this time I first read it, in the science pages in the New York Times. This article about how we're now finding billions of new species, not even beings, but billions of new species in the depths of the ocean where there was no possibility to be living, that we thought, piled high in the depth of darkness. This is the deepest suffering they talk about in the animal realm, of profound ignorance. So it's sort of like the giraffes and the tigers and the ants are in the God realms of the animals, if you think about it. That's how they talk about the animal realm. And as a result of delusions, negative of harming. Then you've got further down the spectrum, even more suffering realm, more suffering suburb, and even more occupied, you've got these spirits, these disembodied beings. You could argue their minds are conjoined with air element. And they're driven by incredible attachment, all kinds of these. Often in the Lamrim, they refer to one kind of spirit called a hungry ghost. They refer to them all as hungry ghosts, but that's just one kind of spirit, and just to really show the intensity of the suffering of attachment. And the ones we know about, we hear about ghosts and things. They're spirits. People who are possessed, they're spirits. They're in the spirit realm, intensely suffering, driven by intense attachment. And then the lowest realm, the worst suburb in samsara, is called the hell realms, plural. And all the texts, they describe all these in great depth. Well, so do the Christian texts, so do the Muslim ones, so do other cultures. So my sense is many people see the same things, but they have their different definitions of what they are, and certainly different definitions of how you get that experience. I mean, in Buddhism, there's no creator sending us anywhere. You know, Lama Yeshe says hell is not some place where the devil is waiting, saying, ha ha, I'm waiting for Lama Yeshe. It is the manifestation of the negative energy of that suffering sentient being. So everything we experience is our own karmic appearance, the Buddha says, the way Lama Zopa puts it. Everything we experience is we have created it. The environment, how it appears to us, all the sentient beings, how they appear to us, our own mind, and even our own humanity, even our own body. We are the creators of all of this, the Buddha says. So here, the main teaching here, which is a bit abstract for us, is to think about the suffering of being born in the lower realms in order to increase this agenda, to not waste this precious life that could end at any moment. And oh my God, I do not want that kind of rebirth. So what's my next step? That leads me to, well, whom can I turn to? Whom can I refer to? Whom can I rely upon to give me methods not to have that kind of suffering? This is the logic of these steps. And then we get to refuge, and we'll discuss that next week. So I remember Lama Zopa saying, this is very hard for us to think about. It doesn't make sense to us. He said, even just your little precious little dog, if you could just for a moment have a direct experience of their mind, the mental suffering would be so unbearable, of that deep ignorance, so unbearable you would never want to waste a precious second of this precious human life. Now that is not how we think, is it? We don't see suffering at all when we see our little poodle. We think it's the cutest little thing since sliced bread. So, these yogis, these amazing holy beings who see the mind at this level, they're either making it up or this is true. So it shows how ignorant our minds are. We can't even see human suffering. We only see suffering if, we're going to talk about that with karma, we only see suffering if it's physical suffering. We don't see mental. We have no idea. So imagine the mental suffering of an animal. It's inconceivable. And we only begin to understand that when we talk about the mind. When we get to high school, we'll talk about the Buddhist model of the mind, So that'll do for today. Unless there's any questions. Okay, so just to summarize, we did the bit of background about who the Buddha is, roughly speaking, and how he's not a creator, and the mind especially being not physical and being beginningless. We discussed that last week. And then we looked at today, and we reiterated that, and then we looked today and talked about this very first one that Tsongkhapa likes us to think about, which is the necessity for a teacher and how to devote oneself appropriately as the basis of really moving beautifully through the path, Then we talked about the precious human rebirth and not wanting to waste, and then we move into entry-level junior school grade 1, where we now increase our wish not to waste this precious life by thinking about how it's impermanent. And then we think, my goodness, what are the types of rebirth I have? So we increase our wish not to waste this precious life by thinking, I don't want that kind of suffering. And then next week we'll start the next point, which is now, well, whom can I turn to give me methods so I do not have that kind of suffering? Well, that's it so far. Nearly finished junior school. All right, Mary Ellen? Done. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Would you like to do the prayers?
Let's just, no, I like to say the word sometimes. Is that okay? Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Just to make it kind of real for our mind. Just think. The dedication prayer is just saying, here we've been, this hour and a half. As many thoughts as each of us has had is as many seeds we've planted. Don't forget that. Nothing goes astray. So we think, I'm going to nourish these seeds from this moment, to continue to try and remember all the things we've talked about today, to think about the meaning, to try and internalize it so I can develop my amazing potential so I can be of benefit to others. And then the second one may be this amazing bodhicitta, which we'll talk about in university level, this amazing aspiration as a result of compassion and love that causes us to never give up wanting to be of benefit to others. May all of that happen. And may our precious lamas live long. Whoever our teachers are, His Holiness, Lama Zopa, whoever our teachers are, but the world needs all of them badly. So may they live a long, long life, okay? And may we live a long life. Okay? So we can keep practicing. And have patience and have perseverance. Have optimism. And never give up, okay? Thank you, everybody. And thank you for those questions. That was so helpful. Ginger, Doug, thank you, people.